So coming off the back of our victory at home last night to AEK Larnaca, of course, we've drew Ghent in the next round of the Europa Conference League. And here to talk about that and lots more is Jonty Coleman from Football London. Jonty, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad at all. Let's start with just that then. Of course, last night, a convincing victory, which we all wanted to see over Larnaca, and there was no real sort of worries there, which was very, very appreciated.
Yeah, no, definitely job done there. I think if sort of going into the night, if you made a little checklist of things West Ham needed to do, needed to secure victory, which I think it kind of sort of did when Scamacca scored after 20 minutes, and further so when they got the red card at the end of the first half. Get minutes to players, give some youth a chance, no fresh injuries by the looks of it.
Yeah.
And they managed to get a couple of players a rest. I mean, admittedly, they're not resting for a game this weekend, but, a bit of a rest nonetheless. So, yeah, it's one of the questions I put to David Moyes last night, actually. Was this sort of a perfect night for you? And yeah, he said it was for exactly those reasons, really. Just, it wasn't just a result of a win, but the sort of elements to it as well was stuff that he was looking for.
Oh yeah, I think that's. I think what Moyes wanted is exactly what he got. Scamacca got a goal. He was pulled off quite early into that second half that frustrated many fans, and you could see from the telly as he walked off, he was a little bit like, but he got a goal, and surely that's got to give him some confidence now after the last couple of weeks have been turbulent for him, I think.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a bit of an interesting one with Scamacca. So last night was his first start since the 4th of January against Leeds, where he scored and then came off shortly afterwards. And then I think he got a knee injury or it flared up in that game. He missed the game, then came back against Wolves in the league a fortnight later, but then was gone again for about a month after that. And then in the Premier League, he's missed. Well, he's been on the bench for the last 4 games, but not brought on in any of them. We've obviously seen him. He had a brief cameo at Man U in the FA Cup, and the same the first leg against Larnaca. So yeah, it's obviously been building up, and then David Moyes' comments on him. He's kind of hinted at it. It was perhaps a surprise in the sense that obviously it's quite a strong statement, but it wasn't like it was completely out of the blue. If you think about the way he'd sort of been talking about it for a week or two, you kind of felt that there was a more reason I'm just not playing him or anything like that. So it kind of made sense. We asked Moyes, because there was a lot of fans, a bit annoyed that Scamacca didn't get a bit more game time last night. And we asked Moyes about that because he came off, I believe it's 54th minute. He came off. And yeah, his reasoning was, which it does sort of make sense to be fair. He said to Scamacca before the game, he's going to play him for an hour. That was the plan all along. But when they went 3-0 up quite early on in the second half, they were taking Bowen and Paqueta off already. And Moyes' thinking was that if he took Scamacca off at the same time, rather than 5 minutes later, it'd give him 2 further chances to pause the game if he wanted to and needed to, which you kind of get. Obviously, it means Scamacca missed out on a few minutes. But yeah, that was the reasoning behind it. I think if you plan to play him for 75, for example, and then takes him off at 55, and that's the reason, then you probably are a bit annoyed. But I think when there's only 5 or 6 minutes difference, he would have liked a bit more game time, I'm sure. And obviously the goal is bound to do him well good. But I don't think, I see both sides of it, but you sort of get why Moyes did it when that was the plan all along.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. And if he was told he was going to be given an hour, then I suppose that sort of sums that up quite nicely with that. But a couple of other highlights from last night I thought was a few of the youth players coming on. Mubama getting his first official senior goal for the club. Potts came on and looked very, very mysteriously like Declan Rice watching on the telly. It was like, is that right? No, it's not. And Len came on as well. Obviously the youth players are on fire at the moment through to the FA Youth Cup semi-final, which we're looking forward to coming to next month. It's going to be, and if we can get a good crowd in the London Stadium as well, and everything sort of surrounding the youth setup at the moment, it's very positive.
Yeah, at the start of the season, I think not so much the 18s, but the 21s didn't have a great start. Right. And there was a bit of concern there, but the kind of message was it's going to take a bit of time. It's a new group. If you look at the 21s from last season, a lot of them are either now out on loan
Yeah.
will start the season out on loan or have now left the club permanently. So it was quite a big transition. The 18s had an absolutely phenomenal season, and they could actually become league champions tomorrow with 4 games to spare. Admittedly, they need to win and they need Fulham to drop points. But if they don't win it tomorrow, they'll probably win it in a couple of weeks. So, that's evident. And that would put them in a national final. It's looking like it'll probably be Man City if they get to that national final, with a place in the UEFA Youth League up for grabs, which is fantastic. As you say, they're in the FA Youth Cup final, and a huge player for 18s and 21s this season's been Divine Mubama. He didn't have a great start to the season. He had a couple of first team involvements. I think he got quite a bit of game time for the first team in pre-season. But when the season started, he wasn't having a great season in terms of goals. He got that debut in Romania, and since then, his form, I've got some numbers. I did have them in one of the tabs. I think I remember them off the heart. But before then, he'd only scored 1 in 12 for the academy sides before that debut. And then since for the academy sides, he's got 25 in 19, which is just a phenomenal record. 11 and 10, I think, in Premier League 2. He's got an absolute bundle in the under-18s Premier League because during the World Cup, there's no Premier League 2, but the under-18s are still going. And because he's eligible for both, he's sort of flipped between the two. I think he scored a few goals in this FA Youth Cup run as well, and it was a brilliant goal last night. I thought Bowen's was an excellent header. In fact, all 4 goals, there's things I like about them. I like Bowen's header a lot, but the sheer sort of cleverness with the finish to sort of get across his man and flick it in. It's only his 4th. It was actually his 4th senior appearance and his first at London Stadium. All 3 have been away so far. So, home debut. There's some quotes going up on Football Under shortly from him, but all his family were there last night. He's only he lives 15 minutes away from the ground. Honestly, you could tell that he's so happy to score, and he just wants to kick on. So that was brilliant to see, and deserved for the season he's having. David Moyes really likes him. You can tell. He said that he's really impressed with what he does. He doesn't just come and get some minutes where he can. He runs, works his socks off, and for Moyes, that's just the perfect sort of attitude to have when you get these chances. So as we're probably going to mention in a bit, he's in the England under-19 squad. I think that's his second call. He was called up there back in September, the last international break for World Cup. So he's having a brilliant season, and great to see him. And also Freddie Potts, 20 minutes for him last night, and a senior debut for Levi Lang as well.
No, I think it was brilliant, and what sort of epitomised the performance, especially from Mubama as well, when he did the post-match interview on the pitch alongside, I think, Jarrod Bowen, I think it was, and it was, and you could just tell straight away that he was absolutely amazed with it, and he was buzzing with it, and you could tell that he was there for the right reasons. And Moyes doesn't give opportunities to youth players lightly. He doesn't just hand them out willy-nilly. He is quite strict with who he takes, and obviously he really, really does like Mubamba there. But if we move on to the draw, obviously today we have drawn Ghent. Overall, from the teams we could have got, do you think that's a good or a bad draw for West Ham?
It's an interesting one. I think what David Moyes was sort of hoping for as one of his priorities was somewhere not far to travel. So he's got that. Belgium, as we saw with Anderlecht earlier this season, it's one of the nearer draws. In terms of UEFA club coefficient rankings, I was looking into this last night actually on the train home, and there's 4 teams that are sort of around the 30, 40, 50th mark, and then the other 4 are sort of between about 100th and 120th. And West Ham and Ghent are pretty similar. I think West Ham are 48th and Ghent are sort of low 50s. So they're pretty even on that respect. Ghent, obviously, I think one of the teams to watch coming out of the group stage were Istanbul. Basaksehir I don't think they had won all 6, but I think they won 5 from 6, or they had one of the better records. And Ghent absolutely dismantled them in their second leg. That game was on Wednesday night, I'm not quite sure, but that one was a day earlier than every other game. So, from that perspective, I think they're doing reasonably well in the Belgian league as well. So they're probably one of the tougher ones on paper, at least. I think looking into it, weirdly enough, I thought the ones to avoid were AZ Alkmaar. As we're going to touch in a minute, their potential semi-final opponents. They knocked out Lazio. They're still in an outside shot for the title in the Netherlands. Unlikely, but I think a third, and I think they're only about 5 points off, so they are in contention. I think it will be fairly tough, but I think it's a case in this tournament, get past Ghent, you probably get past anyone. But I think Ghent and Alkmaar could be, if it is that, one of the tougher runs. But of course, if they beat Ghent, as I'm sure you're about to mention, it's either AZ Alkmaar or Anderlecht in the semi-finals.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of good thing about they do the one draw in two, because you can see the whole route through now. So if we do manage to overcome Ghent, and then, as you said, we've faced either Alkmaar or Anderlecht, of course, who we have already beaten twice in this competition so far this season. So the way I looked at it, what I wanted was something close for the fans. Didn't want to be trekking all over somewhere, like some of the nightmare journeys some fans had to try and get to Cyprus, but it's relatively easy for the fans, which is a bonus. And whoever you get, and we've just got to try and beat them 2 legs, 1-0 one away, of course. And I think we can beat them, and especially with the shocks last night of Villarreal and Lazio departing the competition, I think it's well wide open for West Ham to take it with both hands. And I think it's just a shame with the league position. We can't fully commit to it as much as Moyes may want to like to, because I'm sure he's probably going to prioritise status in the Premier League over winning this. But I do think we can win it.
Yeah, it's hard not to rule West Ham out of winning it. I think they've been the bookies' favourites since the first leg win over Larnaca, and they weren't even that good that night either.
No.
So especially with Villarreal and Lazio exiting last night, I think that was a big shock. Lazio was sort of on the cards because they'd lost their first leg 2-1 to Alkmaar. But yeah, them and Villarreal going out on the same night was quite a surprise. I've seen Anderlecht twice this season. I didn't think much of them. They might have changed quite a lot since, because it's been a good 5 months, I think, now. But the Anderlecht,
I think they changed manager. Somebody put on Twitter, they changed manager, sort of had a resurgence because they were really poor when we played.
Yeah, no, I know, and yeah, that was and West Ham weren't great in that first leg. I think we had to Brit from memory. They brought on Rice, Paqueta, and Scamacca late on and got a late winner there. But it looked pretty comfortable when we played them at home. So yeah, it's quite an interesting one. But West Ham, I mean, certainly on paper, despite their poor league form, have to be considered among the favourites. I think David Moyes sees it as a really good opportunity, but also is very mindful of the fact that, as we saw last night, Villarreal and Lazio exit the competition, and that can happen to any team. So I think he wants to err on the side of caution with that one, but I think he knows that certainly on paper and for club size, and especially when you look at the money West Ham have spent and things like that, they have to be considered among favourites of this competition. They have to.
Definitely. And as well, I think when we play in Europe, we sort of bring a new dynamic to it as well, because we see more of the fringe players come in. And one I like to highlight every single time, one player that seems to start every Europe game is Manuel Lanzini. He gives us something different. Yes, he's not up to it, I don't think, to be playing in the Premier League week in, week out. I don't think he's quite got that quality in him anymore. He's a great player for Europe, though. And last night, one thing that I sort of stood out to me was Lanzini played well and Paqueta played better with Scamacca, just that little bit more forward playing, because we were knocking it around nicely. We weren't being slow and it was backwards. We were pinging it around quite nicely, which is what we've done pretty much throughout the whole competition, bar the first half hour in Larnaca last week. So I think there is a sort of difference to how we play in the Premier League and in Europe, and that's got to be a positive Moyes has to take.
Yeah, definitely. One thing you can say in sort of comparison between the two, at the minute, home form is picking up. Last night was West Ham's 5th game at home in 2023, bearing in mind how much they've played. They've hardly played at home this year. 3 wins, 2 draws. Obviously, there's the game like the Villa game where a win would have been preferred. But if you look at, I think they ended last year with a good 3 or 4 losses on the spin at home, but earlier in receiving home form been quite good. So it's picking up again, and of the last 3 games, they scored 9 goals at home. Again, that's got to be a positive. And I think, considering how bad West Ham have been away domestically this season, they've got to get this home form right. So that is an encouraging sign. As you say, in Europe, they do play with a bit more freedom, or it might be a combination of sort of the quality of opposition or the players being a bit different to who plays in the Premier League. But I thought Lanzini had a really good game last night, moved the ball around brilliantly. I tweeted a stat earlier. I think he made 100 or attempted 112 passes last night and completed 103 of them. Pretty fantastic. And he also, I think he was joint top for key passes, joint top for tackles, and by far top for touches and passes attempted. So, there's a lot to like there. He did speak with media actually after the game, said that there's been no word yet on his long-term future. His contract's currently up at the end of the summer as things stand, but the club do have a 2-year option to extend that. He has been linked with a return back to River Plate, a club he started out his career. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it goes. But him and Areola are the only player to have started every European game this season. And I think largely, especially for these 2 games against Larnaca, I thought Lanzini's come out of them pretty well.
Yeah, definitely, and I see what you just tweeted earlier as well. Having the second leg at home, I think, is a massive boost, and that's I think probably the reason why we beat Seville last year. I think we came back to London Stadium with a 1-0 deficit, and we completely came to life. We're in a quarter final. We got a good opponent, and if we are trailing going into that game, London Stadium was far from full last night, but a quarter final might entice more people in. Now, see, train strikes didn't help things yesterday whatsoever. So being back at the London Stadium for the second leg, if we need that push again, is a massive boost.
Yeah, definitely. And as you say on the crowd, but it's not been full, but I think I believe last night was the most there's been for a European game this season. And bearing in mind West Ham are 2-0 up, there's train strikes. And I think there's been a few European games that have collided with train strikes this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's 40,000 odd for a game against a Cypriot side. There's probably going to be a lot of changes. Already 2-0 up. There's train strikes, fair play. And you like to think that, this could be, you think this is probably going to be West Ham's toughest game they've had so far in Europe. It should be anyway, not just because it's a quarterfinal, but the nature of the opponent. So, you like to think, obviously, West Ham will go to Ghent and come back with a win or at least a draw going into the second leg.
Mm-hmm.
But you feel like, 40,000 there last night, probably going to be a good number more in the second leg. There's real potential there for it to be. It might not be the Europa League, but it's still got potential to be, put on that list of famous European nights for the past year or so. So, exactly. and you like to think so. And it's going to be those that, West Ham want to go all the way. And I think the fans, despite obviously the frustration of this season, the struggles in the Premier League, fans would absolutely love a European trophy, and rightly so. So it could be a really interesting occasion.
Yeah, and I think it's been similar, and there's sort of similarities and differences to come out of the two sort of the 2 European campaigns we've had, because I almost sat there last night and when the final whistle went, there's not really any celebration because we won 6-0, whereas last year we were all going mental after we turned around a deficit to beat Seville, who've won the thing 6 years in a row, or they've won the competition 6 times previously, and it just sort of had a different vibe about it. We now go into a game that I think is much more difficult, obviously, than AEK Larnaca, but it's exciting times, and that is going to be 2 games that fill up a 9-game 30-day period in April. That's something Moyes is going to have to take into consideration. What a jam-packed month that could show whether our European tour will continue and or make or break our Premier League status. What a month it is, April, for West Ham.
Yeah, it's huge. As you mentioned there with the schedule, I asked David Moyes about April before the game, actually, and is pretty annoyed about the first week because obviously West Ham now don't play for 16 from today, 17 from yesterday. And their first week back, they play Southampton on Sunday, Newcastle on Wednesday, and then Fulham away on Saturday. And David Moyes is like, well, why has that had to happen? Can we not go Saturday at least? So I think he's pretty annoyed about that. Rightly so, especially if Europe, especially with obviously the Newcastle game's been rearranged from earlier this season. There's a midweek Premier League round at the end of April where West Ham play at home to Liverpool. So that on top of two games with Ghent, one away, one at home, makes it very busy. But this is why West Ham spent a lot of money in the summer and added again in January, because they need this squad for not just for survival, not just for Europe, but the sheer turnaround of games. A couple of injuries, as we saw last night, and I think West Ham only have 23 senior players at the minute. That's including first choice goalkeeper Joseph Anang, who only got promoted a couple of months ago. 1, 2, 3 injuries. We saw 4 players missing last night, 3 from injury and 1 from suspension. And quickly opportunities open up for academy players. So they're going to need everyone fit and available as much as possible. We can't afford to pick up suspension. To be fair, I think last night was the first suspension picked up this season, so which is a plus, and hopefully they keep it at just one, but or at least close to it. So yeah, going to need a lot of rotation, a lot of competition for places if players are playing well, and these games in Europe. And when players get chances, you've got to take them. And I think some players last night, not everyone, but some players did.
Oh yeah, definitely. Just looking at our fixture schedule there, also obviously the Ghent games on the 13th and 20th in the middle of that sandwich is a game against Arsenal at home, which is no mean feat. And it's got scheduled in 2 days currently after the Ghent game Bournemouth, so that'll be moved a day, I presume, to a Sunday.
Yeah.
And then we've got Liverpool on the 3 days later, then Palace away. Obviously, it's Sat Vieira today, so you know they are dropping like a stone at the moment. But there's just so many games there, and as you said, this squad is now going to be tested. It hasn't really been tested too much so far this season. It's been pretty comfortable, but those fringe players are now all of a sudden going to be getting a game a week now because he can't. You know, all these players can't play 9 games inside 30 days. That's just not going to happen. So Moyes is going to have to work that well and make sure you get the best out of who he puts on the pitch. But in this contrasting now 7 or 16-day break, we do have an international break, and there's a few players going out on international duty. Declan Rice, of course, for England being one of them. But a few going out on international duty. Hopefully nobody gets injured.
Yeah, fingers crossed. We're just waiting to hear a couple of other squads that are yet to be announced. Yeah. Italy and Germany, I don't think have been announced. I've just Googled quickly. Italy still hasn't. I don't think Germany has yet. But at the minute, we know there's 10 players going out, although a good portion of them are young players. I've got a list next to me. So Declan Rice with the England squad, Alphonse Areolas with France, Lucas Paquetas with Brazil, young Christian Heggie, a goalkeeper's got his first senior call-up for Hungary, which is great. Ben Johnson's with England under 21s, and then some youth call-ups. There's Armstrong Okoflex with Republic of Ireland's under 21s. Divine with Barnes with England's under 19s. So I've just realised there's another I didn't write it down. Ollie Scars has been called up to England's under 18s, which is great. And then a couple at Northern Ireland. Callum Marshall's with Northern Ireland's under 19s, and Josh Briggs is with Northern Ireland's under 17s. On top of that, we know that Maxwell Cornier is not in the Ivory Coast squad. Not really a surprise. He's just been out for 5 months. Got a good, 35 minutes last night, but that's the most he's played since September, or it was about 35 minutes. He got on his full league debut on the 1st of October when he got injured. So it's basically the most he's played in the best part of 6 months. Yeah. So that's not really too much of a surprise. I don't think the Algeria squad's out yet, or the Morocco squad, or there's a few others. But there's still going to be a sort of good chunk of players not going on international duty. But at the minute we know about 10 or 11, but there's still quite a few countries associated with West Ham, but if they haven't announced, are likely to announce today. So, I suspect Thomas Soucek is probably going away. Nefa Gerd probably goes. We know Soufal won't be. He's still got his heel injury. So I think he isn't getting better, though, at a minute, but I think it'll probably come too soon. Mikel Antonio, I doubt he goes away with Jamaica because he's got a calf injury at a minute. So, in a way, there's probably a few players that are being saved international duty because of injuries, so that could actually work out in favour. But in other respects, because of sort of a dip in Premier League form, David Moyes is actually hoping that a few players go away and come back better for it, and he thinks that might actually help certain players. So hopefully.
I suppose it's what you get as well. We've signed some better international players, which does result when we come to these international breaks with a massive month ahead of us, praying that none of them get injured. We have got a couple of injury-prone players going out. Nefa Gerd's got a tendency of getting injured. I just pray that he doesn't get injured in there as well. But as you said, with a couple of squads still not being announced yet, there still could be a fair few others going out. But that leaves still a proportion left with West Ham. Obviously, Jarrett Bowen being one of them after probably rightfully not getting the England call up yesterday. So he just sort of said we got to bounce back and sort of a little break now. And for those players, it's just training and building up the confidence, and hopefully some shooting practice for Mikel Antonio if he's fit enough for that. And it's just overall preparing ourselves, praying for no injuries, and being as ready for that game against Southampton as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's probably a good thing that Bowen's not going. Obviously his last call up with England was would have probably been reasonably demoralising for him. Although the sort of noise coming out from him and Moyes, that despite not playing last time, he still really enjoyed it, really enjoyed the experience, which I suppose I get. It was only his second time with the England squad, so that's understandable. But yeah, he's got a couple of goals. He's in actually a bit of improved form. If you sort of look at his numbers this year, or certainly the last 6 weeks or so, he's picking up now. His 2 goals last night definitely would have helped. Interested to see whether Gianluca Scamacca goes to Italy. I'm guessing not. He's hardly played, barring last night, and he's still. I don't know how fit he is, or certainly in terms of match fitness. So, suspect Emerson probably goes.
Yeah, in terms of the Germany squad, I mean, if they've watched any of Kehrer this season, I don't expect they'll be touching him with a barge pole. But but there is still those players to go out there, and let's hope that they all come back unscathed for sure. But the final thing I want to touch on is, of course, Moyes, the ever-present subject of David Moyes is there, and with a couple of injuries, hopefully going to be returning. That's the sort of blessing in disguise this international break. Hopefully, Antonio and Soufal can return ready for that game. But Moyes' position again over the last few weeks has been put under massive pressure. If we lose to Southampton, do you personally think they'll pull the trigger, or do you think it's too late?
I think it's cool. There's been a few perfect windows of opportunities that are long gone. I think that's partly why there's been so much criticism around Palace parting ways with Patrick Vieira today, because it just seems a bit of a crazy time to do it. I think Palace have only got 11 league games left. We'll have 10 left after tomorrow. I think they play Arsenal this weekend away.
Yeah,
so we've got 10 league games. And I mean, that just seems a bit of a rash decision. I think, obviously, it's not been getting great for Palace and Vieira, so you sort of get it from that point of view. But also, you've had plenty of time to do this. If you really wanted to change, you should have done it. And I think that's where you can praise West Ham's board to a degree. They've had the chance to get rid of Moyes. They've had plenty of chances to get rid of Moyes, and they haven't. They've stuck with him. And I think that, it's not a dramatic improvement, but there has been improvement the last couple certainly this calendar year anyway. If you look at results this side of New Year to last side, there is an improvement. It's factually correct. Yeah, it might not be ideal, but I mean, if you look at the Aston Villa game, for example, they played quite well for a long parts of that. Take 1 or 2 more of those chances. West Ham right now will be 2 points clear of the bottom 3, 14th in the table, and that makes things a hell of a lot different. I think the plus side is they've got back-to-back home games. When they come back, they play Southampton at home, who themselves are sat bottom of the league right now. They play Newcastle, who they got a point at not that long ago, and themselves they're in a bit of a dip. Not quite the heights they were hitting at the start of the season. So again, home crowd, home form. Newcastle struggling. Might be an opportunity to get something at least. It might not be a win, but it's a good opportunity against a side that are chasing for Champions League football. Come through those 2 games, and I say at least 4 points. Chances are it's a good position, because obviously after then April, it's pretty mad, and there's Arsenal and Liverpool to come to London Stadium. There's a trip to Palace, Bournemouth, some big games up there. It's not just a number of games; there's some massive games in there. So.
And there's still the factor of those big games to come as well. Many people sort of mentioned after City whacked about 7 past Leipzig the other night. We've still got to go up there, and that's what many people forget. Of course, we should have been going up there tomorrow if it wasn't for them remaining in the FA Cup. But the thing that worries me is we've still got Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City. I think we've got Man United at home in there as well. That's just sort of what worries me. And I think you're bang on, because there was many opportunities to sack him. Just a couple to single out. I think it was plausible to sack him after that Brentford game just before the start of this year, and there's been many other occasions as well. And there was steam coming out of many West Ham fans' ears leaving the Amex a couple of weeks ago. We thought it couldn't get any lower than that, and well, it could do, but they've had many opportunities. And what I'm trying to cling on to is, listen, I would have got rid of him a long time ago. But what I'm trying to cling on to is, if we remain in the Premier League, I'm hoping they've got some sort of plan to go, thank you, Dave, but your time is done. And maybe have a plan of some sort of Carrick or Still or something young and new and energetic to bring to the club, because I think that's desperately what we need. But that's for next season now, I think.
It'd be interesting to see how it happens. I mean, the thing is, and I've said this quite a few times, if you look at when the opportunity's been there to get rid of David Moyes, who would you bring in? And realistically, David Moyes would be the best answer. So I think that's part of the issue. There hasn't been many inspiring candidates out there. If you look at when Leeds let go of Jesse Marsh, they brought in Javi Gracia that's there,
Yeah.
and I don't think that's not really that inspiring. I think when it got to really close, that Everton game, that you felt that if West Ham, if Moyes lost, he might really be sat here. The sort of three candidates that kept getting linked were Bielsa, Dyche, and Benitez. And I don't think either of them I think Dyche would have been the better of the three, but long-term future, West Ham trying to be a sustainable club in European football, I don't think Sean Dyche is the answer to that. I think he's a good manager, and I think he'd have kept them safe, but not long-term, not great. And Benitez and Bielsa wouldn't remotely be inspired with either of them. So again, Moyes is probably a safer option. He knows his squad, knows what he's doing, and he's a very sort of experienced Premier manager. In fact, only Sir Alex Ferguson and Arsene Wenger have had more games as a Premier League manager. So yeah, I think that's part of the issue. If there was this glowing candidate out there that would get the job done and is a good option long term, and West Ham might have tried that, but I think Moyes is probably as good as an option as you're going to get right now, quite being realistic. So it'd be interesting to see how the season pans out. I still think that despite the sort of precarious position, West Ham should still be safe. I think it could be a really special season in Europe as well. Obviously, a quarterfinal is fantastic as it is, but I still think West Ham will go at least one, maybe two rounds further, if not win it. So, very interesting couple of months to come.
For sure. For sure. Well, I hope you get some sort of break over the next couple of weeks, because you're going to have a very, very busy April, mate. But thank you very much indeed for joining me, mate.
No, thanks very much for having me on.
Thank you very much. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. We'll see you soon right here on West Ham Unofficial. We're going to have a little break now. 2nd of April next game. Not going to have to watch West Ham until the 2nd of April. Is that good or bad? You make your mind up. See you soon. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.